Hi, my name is Erin Regan, and I'm the president of the Penn Science Policy and Diplomacy Group here at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. Our group is organized to create and provide opportunities for students and postdocs at Penn to get hands-on experience with science policy, science diplomacy, and science communication. Today we have a really interesting interview with Mr. Milan Yager of the American Institute for Medical and Biological Engineering. He's going to be interviewed by my colleague Camille, and that video is about to start right now.
Could you tell us a bit about your career path and how you got involved in public policy?
My career path started when I was a student at the University of Iowa. And my senior year, I went home for Thanksgiving and was complaining to my father about the politics in the state. And he said, well, if you don't like it, you ought to run for office. And I said, A, I wasn't old enough to be elected. And he said, well, you will be by the time you're elected. And I said, B, no one's going to elect me because I'm from a party that wasn't very popular back in that district. And he says, well, maybe you'll change the conversation. And I came home for Easter break and filed my papers. And when I graduated from college, I moved back home with my parents and spent every single day knocking on doors, just talking to people, because I had no money and no resources. And my opponent, the sitting House member in the state legislature, refused to acknowledge I even existed. And after about 4 months, he started talking about the young boy. It drove me crazy. But by the fall, when the election got close, my issue, which is I only talked about one issue all day long, every day, 7 days a week. How do we improve our school system? And by election day, my opponent was talking about that exact same issue. So you see, you really can change the issue. The unfortunate end of the story is I did not get elected. I didn't have enough relatives. But on election night, I was playing ping pong at 3 in the morning, and a guy said, well, why don't you come to Washington and work for me? And I said, I'd be happy to. So I moved to Washington. His name was Pete Rouse. He became my mentor. And Pete Rouse went on to become the chief of staff to a young senator from Illinois by the name of Barack Obama, and then went to the White House as the #2 in the White House for 8 years.
You have extensive experience during your career lobbying for a variety of interests, from defending the concerns of home builders to that of the trading industry. What brought you to biomedical science advocacy more specifically?
My career in Congress and in Washington public policy has been pretty broad. Most people that go into public policy in Washington, they start on a single issue and they follow that issue through their entire career. So for 40 years, they do the exact same public policy. I came to Washington and worked on some environmental issues. I got a job working for the home builders on environmental and mortgage banking issues. I went to work in the administration and worked on railroad and transportation policy. I've done a variety of public policy issues. So my skill is how to get things through Congress. It's not an expertise in the actual issue. And after 30 years of being involved in public policy, I thought I had one last gig in my life and I wanted to do something interesting. And so I thought, what could be more rewarding than working on medical research? I have a sister who's involved in healthcare, and she always talks about the importance of medical research. And the group I work for, Ambika, was looking for an executive director. And I thought, I'll try that. So I applied and got hired. Ambika has represented the top 1% of the most accomplished people in the fields of medical and biological engineering. And these are great teachers and faculty and researchers, but they have very little knowledge about how to get things through Congress. So while I have very little knowledge about medical research, I have a great deal of expertise on how to get things through Congress, and it's a perfect blend. Ambika's members can talk about the importance of research, and I can tell them about the importance of getting involved in public policy.
The biggest thing that struck me from his talk, and the main takeaway that I had really, was that the problem that I kind of already felt, that scientists are insulating themselves too much and not really coming out to the community, that we need to do that more, became very, very salient. And the need for that much more dire than I even thought it was. Not only does this need to happen, this needs to happen now.
You mentioned during your talk that being able to tell a story was very important in order to convince congressmen. I was wondering if you give numbers or statistics, does that also help to convince congressmen? Is that more important to give an example like if you invest $1, you may get $175 back?
Advocating for medical research is similar to advocating for school playground equipment or for public highways. It's about why is it important for the public to invest in these causes. Teaching people about the value and importance of medical research is about communicating. And so it's more about the skill sets of how to communicate with one another than about what the issue is. Working in science and helping people relieve pain and suffering has always been great. So the question is, why haven't we spent more money finding ways to reduce pain and suffering? It's because there's other competing priorities. So the question is, how do we make science and medical research as important as investing in tax credits for wealthy Americans, or as important as building new bridges, which are certainly needed in our country? The most important way to get your issue on top of the list is first to begin. You have to want to make your issue important. And so we have to get people dedicated to being involved in the cause. It's because one of the problems that medical research has is that we have academics and other researchers who are great in the lab, but they don't think of themselves in the world of public policy. So the first thing we have to do is convince them it's important, they've got to get involved.
He was very keen that students get involved on the ground floor. We don't realize how much of an impact we can have. It's good that we have somebody who's had like 30 years of experience actually lobbying in Washington say that to us. When the tuition issue happened last year, that's something that affected everybody, and suddenly people woke up and were like, we should affect science policy and we have a voice and we should use it. And I feel that that's something that should be happening constantly, not just when a crisis happens.
Secondly, it's about starting a conversation. It's telling somebody about what you do in the lab in a way that they can understand it. So a lot of medical researchers talk in such technical ways because they assume everybody understands how a cell works or how your body works, and most of us don't. So we've got to make it very practical, and then we have to connect it with feelings. We have to tell people that this is about people's lives, people who are suffering, who have pain. If we invested enough money, we can make a better world for everyone, not just Americans, but around the world. And in the end, doing that research not only reduces pain and suffering, but it creates jobs, and it creates economic prosperity, and it creates ingenuity that makes America a better place as well. Today, the ability to say we will generate more jobs or more economic prosperity has not been as convincing as connecting with people in the human way. The effectiveness of your communication skills increase if you can connect on a human level. Have we changed people's lives? There's a lot of economics on why we should build more and spend more on our infrastructure, but we don't. And the same thing goes with medical research. We can talk about the jobs and the economic prosperity, and we ought to. That's important. But the way we get people really committed to it, and members of Congress, is you talk about the human factor.
I really gained a good understanding of how to frame arguments. So like from science, you do learn how to frame things logically, but his points of like, let me tell you a story. And you know that in the back of your head that whenever you watch a politician speak or other people speaking at a town hall, that's kind of their delivery. But having it formalized like that was very insightful.
Do you have any advice for young scientists interested in science advocacy? What skills or connections are important to establish now in order to have a significant impact in American politics later on?
The most important skill a student, a PhD candidate, or somebody at one of our universities can do is to just learn how to talk and have a conversation. The way we win is to go to somebody and explain, what do you do? Why is research important? And we can't get into the data and the scientific discovery. We've got to connect it with a human being. Why is researching for new pain relief important to human lives? Because we might be able to have a better way to treat pain rather than opioids. And a conversation is something more than once. So you can't just go to your members of Congress or your parents or whomever and say, this is important, please trust me. You've got to explain it. You've got to have them come over to your side and understand it. And then you've got to go back again and again and keep relating to them on a one-on-one basis. I have to be good at the science, but I also have to realize science doesn't speak for itself.
Scientists really do need to get out there, and we do need to be communicating much better. We can't really sit on the sidelines anymore.